Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Today's video is going to be on kidney health and the number 3 things you can do to help prevent your kidneys from stress. So off the bat, kidney issues, you hear about it a lot, right? The big things you're going to hear about is cut the protein down, cut the salt down. These may all be true when you already have kidney issues to begin with. The question is, do these issues actually cause the kidney disease, or are these issues more to manage someone that already has kidney disease? And we're going to draw a line between that. We know, according to statistics, that 80% of all kidney transplants, they happen to diabetics. So we know something to do with the diabetes pathology and kidney disease is intimately connected. Now, what is it? I'll tell you, it's high blood sugar, right? The diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is intimately connected with high blood sugar. Typically 126 mg per dl is kind of the diagnostic criteria. The more sensitive criteria, like pre-diabetes, is like 110 or higher. So we know high blood sugar, where the cells are becoming numb to insulin, and therefore the insulin cannot open up that cell and bring that glucose into the cell, so it hangs out in the bloodstream longer. Now, when that glucose is hanging out in the bloodstream longer, what does it mean? Well, it's like letting someone into your house on a cold night, right? It's like if you're outside all night and you're not able to come into the home, there's a good chance there's going to be damage or stress to your body, right? Same thing. When there's glucose left in the bloodstream and not able to be brought into the cell because our receptor sites are numb to insulin, then that glucose has to go somewhere, and it's going to flow through our kidneys, and it can create a lot of stress, a lot of advanced glycation end products. Essentially, it sugarcoats things and it creates oxidative stress. So think of like the creme brulee at the restaurant you go to. They bring out that blowtorch, right? And you see that oxidation, that browning. That's happening in your cells. That's happening in the various glomeruli, the loop of Henle, the various glomerular kidney structures that are involved in filtration. So that creates a lot of oxidative stress and creates a lot of inflammation. So high levels of blood glucose is going to be really important. And of course, high levels of fructose is going to be one of the big driving things, because fructose doesn't necessarily increase blood sugar, but it can create a lot of insulin resistance without really jacking up your blood sugar a lot. And so the more your cells are numb to insulin, then it's going to be harder for those doors, the cellular gates, to open up and bring that glucose in, all right? And then that glucose, the more it hangs out in the bloodstream, the more inflammation it's going to cause. And again, when you're taking in fructose, fructose is going to be 55%, high fructose corn syrup 55%, fructose 45%, glucose. The problem with fructose is there's not as much storage reservoir for it, right? Glucose has a lot of the muscle tissue to be stored in. Fructose really only has the liver to be stored in. So once that liver is full of glycogen, stored sugar, now what happens? Well, now it starts backing up. Now you start getting a fatty liver because it's converting all that extra fructose / glucose to fat. Glucose can go in the muscle. There's about 5 to 6 times more reservoir for glucose in the muscle. There's only about, 1/5 of that in the liver. And so once that liver is filled up, now that liver starts becoming fatty, hence a fatty liver. They call it non-alcoholic steatotic hepatitis NASH. It's a non-alcoholic fatty liver, okay? And then what happens once that liver starts to get fatty, then we start seeing systemic insulin resistance. So the best way to check this out is you can do what's called a functional glucose tolerance. You get a blood sugar meter. I have one over here on my desk. But you would just test your blood glucose fasting and then do a 1, 2, 3 hour reading of how your glucose tests. And ideally, we want to be below 100 at fasting. If you're doing it first thing in the morning, you can have what's called the dawn phenomenon or the Somogyi effect. And that can give you a higher glucose in the morning due to a cortisol or stress response. So you have to factor that into the whole situation. So you want to do it a couple times throughout the day as well. That way you're taking that cortisol response out of the equation. Next thing you want to be doing is you want to be testing it 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. And the goal of that is we're just trying to assess how your blood glucose is fluctuating throughout the day. So if it's here, we take it, it's fasting, it's at 100, and then our blood glucose goes above 120 or 140, we want it to go back below, let's say 120 to 100 within 2 hours and back below 100 within 3. The longer it hangs out up top and the slower it takes to come down, it's an indirect measurement that there's probably more insulin being produced as a result to bring it back down. So high levels of glucose for longer is an indirect measurement that there's probably more glucose, more insulin being produced as a result. Hope that makes sense. Okay, let me just grab one thing here. Okay. All right, awesome. So number one stress on the kidneys is going to be high levels of glucose and or fructose. They're intimately connected. Fructose is going to be more damaging and more insulin resistant stimulating, more insulin resistant stimulating. Number two, I'm going to say, is also going to be mold. So if we have high levels of mycotoxins in the environment, a lot of research on that's going to be very stressful on the kidney. So if you're in a moldy environment, whether there's water damage that's been unaddressed or there's just a high amount of humidity, and remember, humidity means it's harder for water to evaporate. If water doesn't evaporate, sits in the area, once we have moisture sitting greater than 48 hours, we're going to start to have mold potentially form. And mold will spit off mycotoxins, whether it's ochre toxin or whether it's there's like hundreds of mycotoxins. They're just mold toxins. And they will be stressful on the body. They will be stressful on the kidneys. So mold is going to be a big one. So first thing is you want to assess the load in your home. Number one, you want to make sure you fix the root cause of where the mold's coming from. Number two, and then you want to look at your body burden of mold. And we can do a test on that, a urinary test to assess that. And some people actually need to do a challenge on it because they're not going to be able to push the mold out. So they may get what's called a false negative, meaning it comes up with no mold in your urine. But when we provoke it and challenge it and use glutathione and detoxifying support, we actually are able to spit that mold out. So that's really important to keep in mind. Next, of course, will be heavy metal exposure. So whether it's aluminum or mercury or lead, these heavy metals will have a negative impact on the kidneys. Now, use different sources environmentally. The biggest ones regarding mercury will be the fillings, silver fillings in your teeth. They call them silver, but they really should be called mercury because they're greater than 50% mercury. All right, so that fillings in your teeth, lots of different environmental connections, but that's going to be the biggest one according to the World Health Organization. And then, of course, after that are going to be pesticides in the environment, whether it's herbicides, rodenticides, fungicides. These are all going to be things that have to go through the kidney and the liver, and they will definitely stress out the body. So, of course, like number one, eat organic. Number two, if you live in an area where it's being sprayed, make sure you have a really good air filter in your home. Again, I have a couple that I use that work really good. I have three. I have the Air Doctor. I have Austin Air, which I like. It's got zeolite activated charcoal, which filters out a lot of these toxins and volatile organic compounds. And then the Molecule. Both work very, very well to keep my air environment very clean. So if we kind of recap, right, what do we have? We have high levels of glucose and fructose, aka insulin resistant. That's number one. Number two, we're going to have mold and mycotoxins, right? Number three, we're going to have heavy metals. And then number four, we're going to have a lot of pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides, right? Really important. And then, of course, I'd say number five, to make sure you're adequately hydrated, all right? Adequate hydration is very, very important. Adequate hydration, good high-quality water with minerals in it. And I would say making sure your blood pressure is good. What's going to be the driving cause of blood pressure? High blood pressure, inflammation. So the more inflammation from foods, crappy foods, insulin resistance, poor omega-3 to 6 fatty acid ratio, lots of junky trans fats, a lot of artificial hormones and junk in the diet, that's going to drive up your blood pressure. High blood pressure, think of your kidney as a filter, right? So the higher that blood pressure is, the more you're going to blow out the filter, the more you're going to stress out all the little tubules that all the fluid has to work through. So of course, that's going to be really important. So keeping your blood pressure and your cardiovascular system under control via inflammation in your diet is vitally important. All right, hope that helps today. So kind of kidney health, big five things, at blood pressure, inflammation in the diet. Number two is going to be pesticides. Number three, heavy metals. Number four, mold mycotoxins. Number five, insulin resistance and high blood sugar. Awesome. Again, may not be the conventional thinking here, but this is root cause thinking, functional medicine wise. So if you have any issues with these areas or kidney issues and you want to dive in deeper, feel free and let me know here. We'll have links down below if you want to work with me via Worldwide or my colleagues. Also, make sure you subscribe. Click that thumbs up button and that bell. And also let me know if you have any situation where you've had good success with kidney health or anything you want to mention about this topic, please put it down below. Really curious to know your opinion on the topic. Let's see, do I have any questions here that I want to dive into? I think we hit all the major things here off the bat. All right, you guys have a phenomenal day. Take care. Bye, y'all.